Hello, welcome to the Housing Sector Podcast. Today I'm joined with Martin. Martin, thank you very much indeed for joining us today. Let's, first of all, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name's Martin Donkin. I'm the chair of the Coniston House Tenants and Residents Association. Yeah, it's something I guess me and my neighbours formed after our terrible, uh, our landlord's terrible attempt to build flats on our flats. So it's a vertical extension story
Okay,
today.
right. Let's go back to the beginning. So, you've got your flat, and I'm assuming to a certain extent you were quite happy in that, and then your landlord decided to, I'm assuming out of profit and the need for more homes, add onto the top of your flats.
Yeah, our landlord is Eastend Homes. They're a registered social landlord, and they actually went through the planning system to get permission from Tower Hamlets, the local council, to add two extra floors to, I think, five buildings on the Mile End estate, which is where I'm based. And I mean, I've seen, most of us were like, well, we like our buildings; they're fine as they are. But I think we didn't put up a huge amount of resistance because there is a need for more housing, and there's also a need to regenerate the estate because it's a 1960s or late 1960s estate. It had fallen into a bit of disrepair. So we did push back a little bit at the planning meetings. I had a couple of neighbours who turned up, but it got pretty much nodded through to Hamlet's planning. And we were kind of resigned to the whole thing happening, and we had assumed that East End Homes knew what they were doing. Um, but it's been an absolute disaster. So we were sold, well, Tower Hamlets Planning were sold the scheme as a very sort of like minor inconvenience for residents. The extra house flats that would be put on top of our flats were going to be modular and basically just craned on, and we wouldn't see very much disruption at all. And also, that's the reason why none of us were um, offered to move out or into temporary accommodation before all of this started. It's been anything but. It's been so disruptive. The noise when they were starting to build in 2022, knocking down water tanks on our roofs, people who work at home, people who work on shifts, it was horrendous. But then in September 23, following work on the roof, there was a big rainstorm and it just came through and flooded my flat, all my neighbours' flats. The building that we're in, Coniston House, is kind of a U shape. So there's a block and another block opposite, and the bottom of the U joins the two blocks. Uh, both of the two blocks on either side, the top floors got flooded and water coming down walls. And we had a lot of going backwards and forwards between East End Homes and Gracewood, uh, going, you need to sort this out, and them going, oh, we sorted it out. And you're like, no, you definitely haven't. There's still water coming in. Um, this continued until about February when they started putting people into temporary accommodation. So it was not going well. Um, Also, it's about the time that I started looking into the competency of the people behind this project and what they were doing, and noticed that an almost identically similar project in Southwark had been proposed but cancelled by Southwark Council because they'd had advice from Arup that they couldn't possibly meet the building regulations on disproportionate collapse, which are quite important.
Yeah.
So, so I was like, huh, I'm now kind of getting worried. I mean, based on the fact that there's water coming into all of our houses, it's not what was advertised. This other project that's been cancelled, that maybe they don't know what they're doing. So that was sort of like beginning of 2024, and I was in temporary accommodation, and so were many of my neighbours from around February 24. In summer of 2024, Gracewood and East End Home said my flat was habitable despite water still coming in the roof. And I was just like, well, I can't move back in. There's still water moving back in. And unfortunately, it was the same time as my mother got a diagnosis of lung cancer. So I just like dropped everything, went up to York and stayed there for a bit. Um, Eventually, they because the water was coming in and causing so much more damage, they finally relented and have put me back into temporary accommodation in London, so I can now be back where I work and live. Um, and yeah, it's been a bit of a disaster. Um, it all came to about a head this spring when Gracewood, their building contractor and Eastend Homes, split from each other. We're not really sure what's gone on there because Eastend Homes are very much throwing Gracewood, the contractor, under the bus, but most of the contractors, building control contractors, engineers, all of these people are still involved in the project. And our homes are still leaking. The building control questions that we've asked, we still haven't had a reasonable explanation about how they meet the disproportionate collapse requirements. We've been to the health and safety executive who've investigated it, and they somehow think that it meets the regulations, but we can't see that. And I'm very lucky in that I've got the author of the Institute of Structural Engineers guidance on disproportionate collapse in vertical extension, so very specific, who's been working for us for free, and he can't see how any of this meets the regulation. So we're all in a bit of a stuck position at the moment. I'm another one of your reluctant housing campaigners who have been thrown into this. So I've been getting our local MP, councillors, Zoe Garbett on the London Assembly, Tom Copley, Deputy Mayor, they've all been pushing and helping put pressure on East End Homes, but we're still in the situation where our homes are wet. It looks like we're not going to be able to move into them for another 2 years, and we're still not sure if any of this meets the regulations.
Wow, there's so much to unpack there. First of all, you know when you hear of someone and then you keep hearing of them. Why do I keep
Yeah,
hearing of Tower Hamlets now?
I mean, I don't know why it's Tower Hamlets particularly. I think there's when stock transfer happened in the mid 2000s. I think a lot of um, well, I think quite a lot of the housing moved into small registered social landlords, and I just think they've not been particularly good. And the one thing that I've found, I mean, I come from a background of higher education, and I'm used to working quite an open and transparent environment. We're subject to freedom of information, all of that. When this all started, I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll just make some freedom of information requests so I can start getting to the bottom of what the heck is going on. None of that affects resident social landlords in England because they're not defined as public authorities for the Information Freedom of Information Act. And it really does feel like all the checks and balances that should be in place for social landlords that would be in place if they were um, an ALMO, because they, well, local authorities are subject to all of those things, aren't there. And I think somebody sort of said it a while ago. I think these social landlords often paint themselves as the good guys in that they're
Yeah.
performing this public good, but they're not subject to all of the checks and balances and protections for residents that these providers of that public function should be. And
See,
I think it's an oversight.
I would say that they're quite happily hiding behind the not-for-profit banner. That
Mm.
lets them off the hook on a lot of things. We're not for profit. We put all money goes back in. We're socially focused, and we're the good guys. And we can't be expected to understand all of the nuance of building regulations. But they should be held accountable. So, see, first of all, you've got a flat that's got some defects, I imagine, due to its age, but not many. Then they're going to put on modular buildings on top of your building, just going to crane it in.
Yeah.
Surely there's an issue there. So then you have the floods. Then you have your home is no longer habitable. You've had all the disruption of all the noise. You can't live in your flat. What was the temporary accommodation that they put you in? Is it on par with where you were living before?
So initially it was a travel lodge,
Oh
then it was a
God.
service department in Limehouse, which was all right, but it wasn't a home. I'm currently in this is an Airbnb, um, because I think they're starting to finally realize at the management level how bad the situation is. Um, my understanding is that they're supposed to be trying to prepare a maisonette similar to the one that I was living in Mile End. But that's taking a bit longer. So hopefully, in a couple of weeks' time, I'll have something a bit more permanent. But yeah, it's not great, and quite a few of my neighbours, well, are in exactly the situation. I mean, some of them have already been found more permanent maisonettes or houses to live in Eastend Homes as stock, but it's not great. So
Do you think
yeah.
this is a way of offloading a load of residents, make it unbearable, we'll get them out, and then we can demolish the building and start afresh?
I mean, no. I mean, I actually think possibly one of the best outcomes for this now is that the building has become so damaged that it might be better now just to knock it down, buy everyone out, and start afresh with a new um, uh, purpose-built six-story building rather than trying to add two to a four-story. I mean, that would meet the building regulations. It would also bring everything up to date. So one of the problems is that they're having is interfacing the new water system with the old pipes because the old pipes are used to being gravity fed, whereas the new system is pumped and is a much higher pressure. And that's so it's not just leaks from the roof that we've had leaks from all the risers. Um, and I think it's one of these things where designers have come in and gone, oh, this is just so easy. We'll just drop it on top. And they've not done the homework before spades go in to go, actually, what does this mean? And they've assumed that they can fix all the problems as they go along. But it is actually really sad because in 1968, when our building was built, it was there were a lot of really thoughtful things for the time that were done, and that you wouldn't do now, and wouldn't meet regulations now, and sort of like we've learned stuff, and we wouldn't do that anymore. But they were sort of like well constructed flats. Things like the water pipes, all of the electrical supplies, all of that were kind of hidden and put in the walls, and they used things like what's it called? Uh, Pyrotechnics wiring, which is the sort of metal clad wiring that's really super safe. You use it in nuclear facilities, overspec lots of stuff. But that's not being replaced with that. So it has to be replaced with wires and trunking now under the new. And it's just looking more and more shoddy as you go along. And you sort of see this building that was somebody had really thought about when they constructed it in the 1960s, just being degraded by all of this. Oh, well, we'll just fix it, but not with exactly what you had before. Sometimes because they can't. And it is quite sad seeing that happen to your home.
Yeah.
But yes, I do think I don't. I think it being a ploy is giving too much credit. I don't think that at all. I think, however, it wouldn't be a terrible thing if that is where we end up and they do have to buy out. Although we have been asking me and my neighbours about buying us out, and East End Homes claim they don't have the cash funds to do that, which is quite worrying. But I think that's been a problem all along, and a lot of these schemes that they've been doing have been to try and generate cash, but through incompetence have been doing the exact opposite, um, and has left the East End Homes in a very precarious position, really, because now they have a large debt that they have to service, and that's going to take away their ability to fund like future initiatives, refurbishments. It's going to mean that they aren't able to uh, invest, and that money is going to have to come from somewhere, and it will probably end up coming from parts of rent and things like that because they're not going to be able to charge it as part of service charges and things like that because it's your company's debt isn't something that you can put on your leaseholders.
No, look, we're a fair country. We're a modern country, forward driving, great initiative supported. What support have you had when this has been an absolute disaster? I mean, there's nothing else. There's no other way we can paint it. It's been an absolute disaster. What support have you had from MPs, councillors, governing bodies?
Um, well, very little support from East End Homes, and I think the attitude that I feel whenever me and my neighbours talk to them is that we are an annoyance to them, and I think And to an extent, the developers Gracewood, we were an annoyance to because they're not used to working with a building site where there's people living there. They're used to being able to wander in and out of a building site without having to be concerned about the health and safety of residents. Eastern Homes, less, well, I have no sympathy for treating people like that. Um, as far as other people are concerned, our local councillor, Councillor Chowdhury, has been good in asking questions. But there was this one incident where he stood up in the Housing Scrutiny Committee in Tower Hamlets and basically asked them. He said, "Look, I'm making these requests. I'm doing what I can. What more can I do?" And it was actually quite hard to watch because you could see that this was somebody who really wanted to help us, who was in an official position in the local authority, who just didn't have any more things they could do. Uh, um, and that's kind of been a, a thing that I've seen quite a lot in that nobody has any real power over these RSLs. Apsana Begum, our MP, has written so many letters and contacted so many departments, so everybody in government knows about Coniston House and what's been going on, right up to the chief architects and the ministers involved. The most helpful people have been, I'd say, Zoe Garbett, who's now the chair of the Housing Committee on the London Assembly, and Tom Copley, the Deputy Mayor for Housing, in that I think the mayor has had some say, some leverage over Eastend Homes in this project because it was part funded by money from the mayor, the initial project. Uh, And I understand that that East End Homes have been negotiating with him about the mix of social rents and uh, that on the estate, because obviously they now need to make a lot more money from this project. But Tom has been able to get stuff out of them, like the structural engineering documents that we've been able to show our experts, who have been very unimpressed. Uh, but it has taken quite a serious amount of political effort to get there.
My my wife loves the fact that my landlord took me to court, and one of the things is in there that I mustn't be annoying to them or any of their contractors. And she almost dines out on that, that my husband's so annoying he gets taken to court. And you shouldn't feel like an annoyance for asking for your home to be safe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the thing that I'm really, well, diving into this, the thing that you don't expect is to have so much difficulty accessing documentation that shows you the competence and the methodology of how the building that you live in is being modified and whether that is safe. And it's sort of like out of Grenfell. Um, and following Grenfell, you'd think that this sort of thing would become a lot easier and that you'd be able to just go building control person, show me that you do have all the documents that you need to do your function. But no, that's all still secret. And the building compliance environment happens in uh, the dark, supposedly because builders worry that their trade secrets would be distributed because uh, people would then be able to find out how they built XYZ building. But I kind of don't really feel that they should have that privilege in that,
No. Why
yeah,
should that be a
if your
mystery?
buildings are public functions and have public functions, it should be open to the whole public to be able to go and scrutinize and go, oh, I've just noticed that this is not right. And the more, I mean, from working in an open environment, the more people who look at it, the more you kind of have confidence that the thing is correct.
Well, if it's good
Yeah,
practice, you want to share it. If we're building a good home, we want to share our good
yeah,
practice so others can replicate it. But
absolutely. Yeah.
so, does your home? I mean, you've been in temporary accommodation, you've been moved from pillar to post, you've got a flat, a home that's been flooded. Did you want to go back?
Um, I do and I don't. One of the most amazing things about this whole debacle is how close me and my neighbours have got. So
Yeah,
there is a community there that I
yeah,
don't really want to pull apart from. It's also I've lived in Mile End for well since 2002, and I've got quite embedded in the community. So I've been like the local beekeeper in the cemetery park, which is beautiful. Um, it's really handy for where I work. I've got lots of neighbours that I know. In the wider estate, I know a lot of people. I do kind of want to still live there, but as you say, it, I I don't have confidence in Eastern Homes anymore, and I worry that they're not going to be able to restore my home anywhere near the state that it was beforehand. Um, and yes, I think, as I said before, I think actually, really, I'd much rather be bought out and be able to go and move somewhere else. I mean, especially because we know that this project's going to take likely at least another 2 years before people are able to move back in. Um, and all that time, I can't sell my property. I'm a leaseholder,
Mm.
so I'm stuck. Um, and I'm taking on the risk that Eastern Homes will eventually be able to restore my home and allow me to live there or sell it if I choose to. Whereas what I'd much rather happen is Eastern Homes buy it off of me for a reasonable price, and they take the risk about whether they're actually going to finish the project or not. But as I said, they told us that they don't have the money to do that,
Have
so
you
which
got?
is
Uh,
concerning.
are there teams of builders working round the clock on it as we speak? Are they, 5 days a week, or is it scaffolding up and no action?
In I think late February, when Gracewood and East End Homes had their breakup, nothing happened for quite a while. Now they are starting to do work. So there's a kind of frame skeleton of the new flats made of steel on our building at the moment, and they're starting to put what looks like internal walls up. So there is work going on. I mean, it is just during work days, but it doesn't really matter because hardly any of us are there. I mean, there's still quite a lot of people living in the building, don't get me wrong, and they are suffering as well.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, it's it seems to be progressing slowly, and that is in itself worrying because we know that they're conducting a further review into whether any of this meets building regulations, and it feels like that should be the urgent thing at the moment because if they discover that they don't, what are they going to have to do? They're going to have to remove everything they've done, I guess. There's no way. If what me and my structural engineer thinks is happening has happened, there's no simple way of making the building compliant after the fact. The uh, bit of the regulations that are involved here are the disproportionate collapse requirements, which class buildings into uh, risk classes. Uh, our building, as was, is a four-story residential building, so falls into class 2A. Uh, because it's going to go up in stories to 6 stories, it will fall into class 2B. And the problem with that is that our building almost certainly doesn't meet the regulations for the disproportionate collapse requirements because it was built before they existed in 1968. The regulations were brought in following the Ronan Point tragedy. I don't know if you know uh, that one.
No.
So this is a building in Canning Town. It was a big a big tower block. It was a large panel system tower block, and I think we're going to start hearing a lot more about these large panel system tower blocks. But what happened was a little old lady went to make tea in the morning, turned her gas cooker on. There'd been a leak, and there was a gas explosion. And because of the way it was constructed, the walls of her living room blew outwards, and they were supporting walls. And all of the floors on the one side of the building just pancaked down. And following that, the government brought in regulations to say you've got to control progressive collapses in buildings so that if there's an explosion, it doesn't cause an effect disproportionate to that uh, incident. So the problem is our building at the moment, our building as it was built is unlikely to meet the regulations based on its construction. It's very typical for its time, masonry walls, concrete floors with reinforced concrete in the floors, but no vertical ties to arrest vertical progressive collapses. Um, the one thing you can't do is make a building less compliant or part of a building less compliant than it was if it wasn't previously compliant. And the upshot of the change in class will mean that the non-compliant existing bit of the building will become worse with respect to the requirements because it will miss the higher requirements of the higher class by a greater degree. And this is well known, this is well discussed in building control documents, even before the new building safety regulator came in. And this is the reason why Arup told Southwark on their similar project that it would be unlikely to be feasible to do this on pre-1960 buildings of 4 stories. So we're pretty sure that this is what's going on, and just waiting for it to hit the fan, really.
You mentioned earlier you're one of these reluctant heroes, and by the way, you are welcome to the club. It's an ever-growing club, and it's full of great people. Um, you're a smart guy, you're an intelligent guy. Would you say that what's been happening to your home is fed by stupidity and greed?
Um, Absolutely. I mean, well, I'd say definitely. I think it's definitely financial responsibilities, and I think also just this sort of culture of that's everyone else's responsibilities but mine to check that thing. So there's this term professional curiosity that came up a lot in the Grenfell inquiry. And I think that's one thing that I've not really seen from many people in this project. And that you ask questions, you're like, how can you not know the answer to
Yeah.
that questions? I mean, even of Eastern Homes' own representatives, because you're like, this is a really important thing you're doing. It's affecting people's lives. I mean, you can see it's not going well. Um, and the number of times we ask a question, and they're like, oh no, that's dealt with by somebody else. You're like, it is, but surely you should have a view on this because it's about people's safety and well-being and the viability of this project in the long run. And there's so many questions that I can't believe haven't been asked prior to the start of this construction. Um, but every time I pull a turnover a new stone, I'm like, well, here's another question that really should have been asked before the loans were agreed for this project. I mean, that's the one thing that I find hardest to believe in that Eastend Homes obtained a large credit facility to enable this project at all. And if I was the provider of that money, I would be like, right, I want to see all of the compliance because this is going to affect my investment and whether you can pay it back or whether you go bust. Because it's such a big project and it involved so much money compared to the size of Eastend Homes. So yeah, I think it's that. It's not so much that people are stupid or necessarily greedy, but just so willing to view things as other people's problems and not actually have that inquisitiveness and go, is this right?
Yeah. And we're talking about the finances here. How much must it be costing them? And let's assume for at least the next 18 months or 2 years to put you in temporary accommodations, Airbnbs and travel lodges. I mean, how much must this be losing them in millions?
Well, I mean, there's uh, 70 households in Coniston House. I mean, not every one of them had to move out because of the water ingress. So let's say there's maybe we still don't really know 20 households in accommodation. If they're in an Airbnb, that's going to be like two grand a month or
Yeah.
something. It's a lot of money, and I mean, this is probably why they've proposed to well offered to move me into a maisonette under their control. I mean, rationally, actually, it doesn't make much difference whether I'm in a property that they control that they don't ask me to pay for, or they're in a property that they're paying for. They're still losing money, but I could see how in a corporate environment, a line of money going out looks like a lot worse than a line of money not coming in. So
But
I
are
can
you
see,
still
yeah,
paying? Are you still paying your leasehold for a home
I
that you're
am,
not
yeah,
in? You are.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we do have a really fantastic set of solicitors from Anthony Gold who are helping us make a compensation claim for that, and that they are looking into how we can claim. Well, they're advising us on how much we can claim for um, uh, the possessions that we own that have been destroyed, the lack of our ability to enjoy the properties that we have, all of the disruption, noise. overshadowing from the scaffolding while we have been in there. So we are being helped out with that, and that will be another cost that Eastern Homes has to bear.
I think the real cost here, and you touched on your mother there. My prayers are with her. It's you've got a community there. You're the beekeeper. You've built friends, relationships. It's close to work. It's not just four walls, and this is the problem that often gets overlooked, isn't it? It's stock to housing providers. It isn't a home, and that's the big point they miss. We are coming to the end, but just quickly, if you can sum up, what has been the emotional toll on you?
It's been really, I mean, I think when they effectively made me homeless when they cancelled the a temporary accommodation, and I got my mother's diagnosis. I think that sent me quite into a dark place. Having said that, because it was all hands to looking after mum, and just to say she has a really successful operation, and she's almost fully recovered now. So our NHS is amazing. That kind of focusing on something else actually, I think, kept me sane for a while. But it is hard, and the support that I get from my neighbours and talking to my community, it has enabled me to carry on, and I can. I sort of like see all the people out there doing similar things with similar landlords, trying to get repairs done. And it is important that we work together and just support each other, because the best thing has been being able to talk to people who are going through, like my neighbours, the same thing, going, am I going mad? I am not being, this isn't reasonable. What's happening to us? And just to know that you can bounce stuff off of somebody is really helpful. And yeah, I love my neighbours and colleagues, and uh, all of the people who've been supporting me, including. Uh, I'll give a special shout out to Zoe, because actually she's been getting a lot of Garbets, a lot of emails from me over the years, and it's been really supportive in reflecting back that what we're going through is not an acceptable outcome for any process.
Let's see if we can get her on the podcast. I can definitely say, Martin, if we were face to face, you'd be getting a hug right now from me. Stay strong, stay in contact, and let's catch base in a few weeks' time and see how things are going. But
Yeah.
that this is one of the things that I've learned through these podcasts is there are so many more of us, and every time I do a podcast, I get 3 or 4 calls from people that want to come on now, which is great. And it is sharing that. And we all talk about, don't we? We mustn't bottle up our feelings. We must get them out in the open. And here we are doing that. So please do that and stay strong. And if there's anything you think we can do here, it's only me, but if there's anything you think we do, please, Martin, reach out.
I mean, I think with all of these things, it's just helping raise the awareness of what is going on and keeping that pressure on, and making sure that landlords know that there is a public out there who are watching them, along with the politicians. And I would say the most important thing, anyone going through any of this, is to not, you will get angry, but you need to work out what you do with that energy. And I've been pushing it into rallying my neighbours, writing to MPs, doing positive things with that energy. And if for anyone in that situation, I'd say do that. And if you don't know how to do that, reach out to people like me, and we'll help you set those functions up and move forward.
What a perfect ending. Together strong. Thank you very much indeed, Martin. Stay in contact.
Pleasure talking to you, Ben. All right. Catch you later.